Hello everyone. Let's continue learning about the relevant classes for strings, specifically the StringBuffer class. In the previous session, we discussed the string class and presented two questions. First, when implementing this task, how do we read the philenum? The philenum is uncertain temporarily. So, we can assume the philenum and then use string methods to replace it with the correct name. The second question is how to concatenate numbers from 1 to 100. We can use the plus operator to concatenate the numbers in a loop and convert them to strings. Now, let's move on to the StringBuffer class. As the name suggests, string refers to the string data type, and buffer indicates that it is a buffered or mutable string. This means that StringBuffer represents a mutable sequence of characters, allowing us to modify the contents of the string. When dealing with operations like insertion, deletion, modification, and searching in strings, we generally use StringBuffer. However, when we only need to perform search operations, we typically use the string class. Now, let's take a look at the common methods of StringBuffer. It has three typical constructors. The first one creates an empty character buffer with an initial capacity of 16 characters. The second constructor takes a string parameter and creates a buffer with the content of the given string and the capacity of the content's length plus 16. The third constructor specifies the buffer size and creates an empty buffer with the specified capacity. For example, if we create a string buffer with no content, its length will be 0, not 16. However, calling the method to get the capacity will return 16, but its length returns 0 because its content is empty. Similarly, in the case of strb2, it is passed the parameter 刘海龙, which consists of 3 characters. Its length will be 3 plus 16, and actual capacity will be 3 plus 16. Now, let's look at other methods of StringBuffer. As we mentioned earlier, it can perform append, delete, modify, and search operations on characters. Let's look at the first one inside here. You can append to it. What does this appending mean? It means adding the string at the end of the StringBuffer class. The append method can take 3 different types of parameters. It is overloaded to accept strings, StringBuffer contents, and character arrays. On the next page, similarly, you can append 3 different parameters. Here is a character array. Where to take it from? How many to take and put into StringBuffer? You can append our double type. You can append any of our objects. Looking inside this, we can find in the documentation. We can append double type, float type, integer, long integer, many types. We can all append into it. It will convert these different types into strings and add them to our character sequence. So far, we have seen appending at the end. But can we specify a position in the middle? Yes, we can. Insert, then the method becomes insert, where the first parameter is the position you want to insert, and the second parameter is the content you want to insert. Similarly, the insert method is also overloaded. You can see it in the documentation. Many overloaded methods. The first parameter is the position. The second is our various types. In addition to the previous insert and append, Now let's talk about deletion. For deletion, we can specify a range for deletion, or delete a specific character at a particular position. The former is for deleting a group, and the latter is for deleting a single one. Another important method is, when StringBuffer needs to output data, we generally convert it to a string object. There are two methods. One directly converts it to a string, and the other takes a portion of it as a string output. The substring method has a starting and ending point, which retrieves the characters between these 2 points. Usually, this method includes the starting point but excludes the ending point. Let's pay attention again to the process of storing data in StringBuffer. When we create a StringBuffer object, for example, strb is set to 林海龙, we are actually creating a string object, or reference in the stack. It refers to a space allocated in the heap, where 刘海龙 is stored. Generally, this space is initialized with a length of 3 plus 16 characters. When we append to it, for example, when we use the append method and add 工程师 engineer, the strb1 second itself does not change. In fact, it still points to the same memory location in the heap, but the 工程师 is directly added after the existing content. This is more efficient than working with regular strings, since it avoids reallocating and copying the entire content. Thus, when we perform operations like adding, deleting, or extracting parts of a string, StringBuffer is faster than regular strings. However, we should also note that there is another class called StringBuilder, which also has a buffer for character sequences, and its functionality is the same as StringBuffer. StringBuilder is not thread-safe, while StringBuffer is. For beginners, it is recommended to use StringBuffer and avoid using StringBuilder. That covers the content related to StringBuffer. Thank you, everyone. Write down the execution result of the following program.